we'll most certainly see quite a few big names get shuffled around.
Known to the organization, he no longer wants to be there. He wants to join another team. He wants to be traded.
NFL blockbuster trades are a lot more common now, and that trend is likely here to stay. So, let's embrace it with our predictions for which 10 NFL stars will be traded next. DeVante Samuel. Despite coming off the best season of his career and helping the San Francisco 49ers to the 2021 NFC Championship game, the so-called wingback would rather take his talents elsewhere. A week before the draft, Samuel requested a trade from the only NFL team he's ever known. The 49ers have been firm on their stance of wanting to keep him, but sometimes you have to be ready for the inevitable. The 49ers will soon be a cap-strapped club as extensions for other key players are coming up. If Samuel has already decided he doesn't want to play there long term, there's not much they can really do. Samuel might play out the final year of his rookie contract, but he holds all the leverage after. Even if the 49ers tag him next offseason, Samuel can just refuse to play unless they trade him. The 49ers have time to resolve the matter, but it's not too early to forecast a Samuel trade to take place at some point over the next year. Somebody will happily play Samuel what he's worth, and I'm sure that team will use Samuel the way he wants to be used. Christian McCaffrey. In the 2020 offseason, the Carolina Panthers re-signed the superstar running back to a 4-year deal worth $64 million. Run CMC was coming off just the third season of 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in NFL history, so the deal was more than fair at the time. Unfortunately, injuries have limited the Pro Bowler to 10 total games over the last 2 years. GM Scott Fitterer wasn't the guy who handed McCaffrey that contract. The star running back is under contract through 2025, and given his position and age history, it's unlikely he'll live up to his current deal. The rebuilding Panthers would be wise to unload McCaffrey's contract in the not-so-distant future. He could bounce back in 2022 and re-up his value, but if he has another injury-riddled season, his value will completely diminish. So, does Carolina want to take that risk and wait and see how things play out? Either way, it certainly feels unlikely that McCaffrey will finish out his contract in Carolina. I'm sure there's a Super Bowl contender or two out there who will look at the 2019 version of C-Mac and decide to take a chance on him. DK Metcalf. If our calculations are correct, Metcalf and Samuel will be in the next wave of superstar wideouts to get traded. Hey, if Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill, and A.J. Brown, 3 of the game's top 10 wideouts, can all get traded in one offseason, anything's possible. If the Seattle Seahawks wouldn't pay Russell frickin' Wilson to stay and try to build the offense around him, should we really expect them to treat DK Metcalf any different? Especially considering the fact that he's not even a quarterback. Let's be clear, the Seahawks horribly managed the final years with Wilson. It remains criminal that the Wilson and Legion of Boom-led Seahawks only captured that one Super Bowl together. Money is almost always the main driving force. The Seahawks rarely hand out big-time contracts to their star players, which gives us enough reason to think Metcalf will be traded. And secondly, Metcalf should feel more inclined to join a team with a top-level quarterback than stick around with a team entering QB purgatory like the Seahawks. 2022 is the final season of Metcalf's deal. If he's not traded by the end of the year, the likely option is Seattle tags him and trades him before, during, or after the 2022 campaign. So, it's only a matter of time. Daron Payne. The Washington Commanders aren't lacking in talent on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the front seven. The group all starts with 2020 second overall pick Chase Young, who has future Hall of Famer written all over him. The Commanders also have Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and Montez Sweat. They spent a 2021 first rounder on linebacker Jamin Davis and a 2022 second rounder on Fedarian Mathis. Do you see where we're going with this? That is a lot of depth. The salary cap also means that the Commanders won't be able to keep all these guys. Allen is signed long-term, and the team picked up the 5th-year option on Sweat's contract. Payne is only signed for 1 more year. So, he's expendable with Young, Mathis, and Davis now in the fold. Washington can't put all that money into the front seven, so they'd be wise to deal Payne for another roster player or some valuable draft capital. If the Commanders are out of the playoff race come the 2022 trade deadline, Payne should be one of the top players on the market. The Commanders need to think long-term here. Dealing the 2018 first-round pick would be best for both sides, plain and simple. Kenny Golladay. The New York Giants gotta have buyer's remorse after handing landing the former Detroit Lions star wideout a 4-year, $72 million deal in 2021 free agency. Just one of the many mistakes in the Dave Gettleman regime. It's hard to blame Golladay for failing to produce in New York during the 2021 campaign. Going from Matthew Stafford to Daniel Jones, well, it's quite the downgrade. But let's not forget Galladay's incredible skill set. This guy led the NFL in touchdown receptions during the 2019 season and could easily flourish as a #1 receiver elsewhere. Several teams should come calling for Golladay if he doesn't get it going in year 2 with the Giants. New GM Joe Schoen went about clearing cap space by releasing pricey veterans like Logan Ryan, Kyle Rudolph, and James Bradbury. But why stop there? Moving out Golladay to a receiver-needy team makes sense for both sides. With Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slayton in the fold, the Giants have enough skill position guys on offense anyway. Danielle Hunter. Many of us expected the Minnesota Vikings to begin a rebuilding period by now, but no. They have a new GM and a new coach, sure, but their roster is practically the exact same as last season. Kirk Cousins was curiously handed a 1-year extension, even though he only won the lone playoff game in his career.
You like that?
The Vikings traded down in the first round and passed on a potential future star in Jameson Williams, who went to the rival Detroit Lions. At some point, the Vikings' new brass will realize that they aren't built to win long-term and really need to rebuild. Just look at the Atlanta Falcons this year, for example. In the inevitable rebuild in Mini, we'll likely see them trade away standout pass rusher Danielle Hunter, who remains under contract through the 2023 season. Hunter missed the entire 2020 season and was limited to 7 games in 2021, though he managed to post 6 sacks in those contests. Clearly, a healthy Hunter is still capable of pushing for double-digit sacks in a season. Lots of teams would love a guy who's only turning 28 with 3 seasons of 12 or more sacks on his resume. The Vikings should be content to dump his contract for a mid to late round pick. Wouldn't a team like the New England Patriots, Baltimore Ravens, or Los Angeles Rams be perfect for Hunter? The 2015 third round pick turned out to be one of the best draft steals of the last decade. But a fresh start is probably the best call for both sides, especially if Hunter wants to seriously compete for a Super Bowl. Robert Quinn. Remember when the Robert Quinn contract looked like a giant mistake by the Chicago Bears front office? Pepperidge Farm remembers. In 2020, the Bears gave Quinn a lucrative 5-year deal worth $70 million. He failed to make much of an impact in year 1, but all Quinn did in year 2 with Chicago was record 18.5 sacks, which is a franchise single-season record. So that bodes well for the new Bears front office and coaching staff. Quinn reset his trade value and should be a hot commodity for teams looking to beef up their pass rush. Quite frankly, which teams with cap space wouldn't want Quinn? The Bears are in full-scale rebuilding mode and need to accumulate all the draft capital that they can get. Quinn is one of the few key trade chips this depleted roster actually has. It may not happen in the 2022 trade deadline, but when NFL teams have more cap space to work with next offseason, well, there should be plenty of interest in the 3-time Pro Bowler. A Robert Quinn trade just seems inevitable at this point. Adam Thielen. If the Vikings follow logic and actually rebuild, Danielle Hunter may not be the only notable guy on the way out. Wide receiver Adam Thielen is entering his age 32 season. Injuries and a lack of production tells us that he's past his best before date. Thielen hasn't hit 1,000 receiving yards since the 2018 season, and with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook now serving as the focal points on offense, Thielen is unlikely to get to the 1,000-yard mark again, at least as a Viking. The man can still play, but he shouldn't finish out his career in his home state, if you ask me. Thielen likely isn't a part of their long-term plans, so Minnesota should be motivated to get out of his contract, which runs all the way through 2024. Thielen would be an ideal pickup for a team with an elite quarterback who's in desperate need of a decent number 2 wideout. The Buffalo Bills, San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, and Tennessee Titans would all make sense, just to name a few options. Add it all up, and it only makes sense for Thielen to get traded within the next year or so. Ryan Tannehill. There's no indicator that the Titans are actually planning to trade Tannehill in the short term, but the organization's decision to take Liberty quarterback Malik Willis with the number 86 selection in this year's draft is a strong indicator that they truly believe they can do better. Many viewed Willis as a potential first or early second round pick, so it was shocking to see him fall all the way down to the 3rd round. That that the Titans are complaining, because they have a young, cheap, athletic potential replacement quarterback on their hands now. Tannehill was excellent in 2019 and 2020, but he wasn't capable of leading the offense when Derrick Henry went down with a foot injury in 2021. And his awful outing in the divisional round loss at home to the Cincinnati Bengals cannot be forgotten. Now in his mid-30s, Tannehill could very likely be on the decline. Willis, on the other hand, is more dynamic and has a much higher ceiling. We would just love to see him and Henry in the same backfield running the offense together. We aren't saying Tannehill will get traded by the start of the 2023 season, but at some point, they'll likely move on from the 2019 Comeback Player of the Year and give Willis the chance to run the offense. Calvin Ridley. This one is rather obvious, but we had to include it anyway. Ridley stepped away in the midst of the 2021 season to deal with his mental health. Then, in March, the league announced that he was suspended for the entire 2022 season after gambling on games. The Falcons used their 2022 first-round pick on USC wideout Drake London. Something tells me they wouldn't have done that if they were planning to keep Ridley around long-term. Ridley is a superstar caliber wide receiver, but he and the Falcons obviously would benefit from a fresh start. In an ideal world, the Falcons would deal him for an early round pick, and Ridley would agree to an extension with his new team. Ridley flourished as the #1 wideout in Atlanta, as the Julio Jones era came to an end. But the relationship between the two parties has surely soured. Ridley could bring Atlanta a lot of draft capital on the trade market as they try to get through a painful rebuilding process. It would be an absolute shock if he wasn't on a different roster come week 1 of the 2023 season. But which other NFL stars do you think will be traded in the near future? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.